Coming up on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell, in a familiar setting. Also, Ron Richards and our guest, Mike Wolfson. You know when we bring in Mike, why, right? We bring him in usually because it's Google I.O. time, and now is no different. Google I.O. 2021, big keynote. We talk all about all of the announcements. We talk about Material You. We talk about this new effort with Android Wear, and it's Google and Samsung and Fitbit all working together on something. So much crazy news, and it's coming at you next on All About Android.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Headspace. Devoting just a few minutes per day to focus on your thoughts can change your life. Headspace is the easy-to-use app that can help you sleep, focus, act, and just be better. Go to headspace.com/AAA for a free 1-month trial. Hello, welcome to All About Android, episode 525, recorded on Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. Your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Ron Richards. And Jason, you are in a familiar seat for our video viewers who are watching right now.
Familiar, sort of. I mean, familiar at one time. And then a year ago, this pandemic thing happened, and my familiar seat became the corner of my bedroom. It's
like a blast from the past, man, to see the background, the green behind you, and all that sort of stuff. It's good to be home.
It is. I'm home. Yeah. It's nice
And on such an important day, as Google kicks off Google I.O. today,
yes,
I can't think of a better time for you to return to the studio.
Yeah, that was just kind of like it happened that way. So I love that it did. Flo will not be on this evening. She's had quite a day covering Google I.O. For Gizmodo and everything, so she requested to bow out for this evening, and totally understand. Those days happen. Flo, hope your day improves a little bit, and that we can see you next week. But joining us, as he usually does for our Google I.O. episode, is none other than Mike Wolfson, MikeWolfson.com. How's it going, Mike?
Hello. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah, good to see you too. Hey. Google developer expert.
This is like a great legacy to have Michael on around I.O. time, right? It wouldn't be I.O. time without Michael. So
absolutely. I'm
usually on pre-I.O. though, where I make all sorts of wild predictions that never come true. So at least this time we actually know the news, which is fun.
Yeah. So I just FYI, Mike, you were first on June 25th, 2012. So almost 10 solid years of coming onto the show. What a cool legacy. That's awesome. We have you on for Google I.O. every single year. Love it.
It's really cool, actually.
Great.
Yeah, it's always great to get you on, and this is a great a great I.O. to have you on as well. Obviously, you are more dialed in, way more dialed in than Ron or I to the developer side of things. Google I.O. is, after all, a developer conference. So hopefully, a little bit later, we're not going to have any emails on today's show or any feedback. Instead, I put in a block there that's really focused on some of the developer news that I caught. So I'm hoping that can be kind of like an opportunity for you to like fill us in and let us know why these things are cool. Because I'm sure you're a lot more dialed into that than we are. But we've got a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about. Google I.O. did happen or is underway right now. The keynote happened this morning. And so why don't we just jump right into it? It's time for the first block, and that's Google I.O. news.
And all I got is Google I.O. news on Android News.
Well, before we get into it all, what did you guys think?
Like high level, like Google I.O. About the keynote?
Quick, we've seen a lot of these keynotes before. Yeah. We were wondering what it was going to be like. Pandemic. We were told, Sundar said it was going to be significant. Do you feel like it delivered, or do you feel like it disappointed?
I feel like when I was watching the keynote, I was a little disappointed because I felt like the first hour of it, as impressive as some of the stuff was, still just kind of felt like Google flexing a little bit and saying like, hey, check it out. We're a smart company. Look at these cool things. But it didn't really tie into much specifically that, like, as a consumer or even as a developer to a certain degree, there wasn't a whole lot of actionable stuff that you can be like, oh, cool, that's coming or whatever. It's just more like Google showing just the prowess of this grand like AI, network that they've built and everything. But I think in thinking about it afterwards, some of that stuff is has grown to be more impressive to me. What did you think, Mike?
Well, when I agree with you. The stuff where they were showing LaMDA, which was where you could like talk to inanimate objects, I thought like that has a lot of practical uses and could be interesting. But they demonstrated how you could ask a paper airplane how it feels after it's been thrown, which kind of missed the mark, right? Like, do we really need to spend these, teraflops of computing power to, ask a paper airplane about its feelings?
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. If I had guessed what we were going to see at Google I/O, talking to a paper airplane was definitely not on the list. But it was an interesting conversation considering it was with a paper airplane.
I thought it was all a little underwhelming. I thought, I guess maybe because I'm probably suffering from my own high hopes. I was all ready for new hardware, new all this sort of stuff. And I'm not, I don't think it's necessarily bad. Some of the stuff they announced was really interesting, and we were very close to a lot of the stuff they talked about. But I don't know. I was hoping for a little more bombast. Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, and Pichai, like you said, had kind of teased this to be like very significant stuff, and so, but when you have it as open-ended as that, like significant announcements, like, okay, yeah, there were significant announcements in the event, but everybody's going to have a different interpretation as far as what qualifies as significant, especially in light of some of the leaks that we saw leading up to the show, which granted, that's not Google's fault, but still. Yep. You can't help but like hope for the moon when that's mentioned in an earnings call. And then, depending on how you defined it, you're either going to be impressed with what you see or let down. So we should start by saying that this statistic, which I think is pretty impressive, Android is now running on over 3 billion devices around the world. And this isn't just smartphones, of course. Android operates on a wide swath of different types of hardware: TVs, smartwatches, smartphones, tablets, game consoles, refrigerators, all sorts of things. It was 2.5 billion devices in 2019, 2 billion in 2017. And now we're at 3 billion. By the way, total number of people estimated to be living in the world, 7.8 billion, just as like a comparison, even though I know that probably doesn't even matter a whole lot when you're comparing devices to people. But it is important, though, to note that this only includes devices that are using and utilizing Google Play services, of which Android is an operating system that there are a whole lot of devices out there that are not using Google Play services. So that number is definitely a lot larger, but impressive nonetheless, right?
Sure.
It's a number that's hard to comprehend, it's almost too big
once it gets so large, it is, but it is impressive. No, it is impressive, and it just like, I think it underscores how far we've come, in the 10 years of us doing the show and watching Android develop and how it's grown, to be like it was an upstart coming out post iOS, and I feel like it was an upstart for many years after that, and now it's kind of settled into, it firmly is entrenched in the digital ecosystem of the world.
Yeah.
Oh.
The crazy thing you touched on is that it's really more than just that, because that was just the phone devices using Play services, and there are so many more devices using Android not hooked into that ecosystem. So it's really crazy to think about the real numbers of Android devices out there.
Yeah.
Amazon uses that on the base of their devices.
Yeah, so. Totally. And not an insignificant number. A lot of devices in, kind of the Chinese market, Xiaomi devices. I mean, Xiaomi is huge. Huawei, these manufacturers that aren't using Google Play services yet have insane numbers of devices out there. So that number is probably a lot larger. I couldn't possibly estimate what it is, but definitely a lot larger than 3 billion. Even though that's an insane number to begin with. But number of devices, whatever. Ron, you've got the fun one.
Well, yeah, this is the big news. As we've all known, we've been tracking all year Android 12. We've been going through developer previews for months now, and Android 12 Beta 1 is out. It was unveiled at Google I/O earlier today, and with it is the beginning of Material You. I don't know how I feel about that one. Friend of the show, Samir Samat, the VP of Product Management for Android and Google Play, calls it the biggest design change in Android's history. Which I think is a little hyperbole, Samir, but with all due respect. Material You is customization that reaches across all of Google's products. On the phone, wallpaper sets the design of the devices, color, style, sliders, widgets, big buttons throughout, more animations. Quick settings have larger, more colorful buttons. Fully redesigned widget platform as we see the resurgence of widgets again. The new power button menu is no more, moving the Google Pay and smart home controls into the new quick settings. And you hold the power button now to summon the assistant, similar to what Samsung has done with Bixby for a few years. So we've seen leaks of this. We got a sense of what was coming, what I like to refer to as chunky Android. I, for one, believe the switch to Material, the initial switch to Material, still was the biggest design change in Android's history because it went from being very piecemeal to a actual built, thought out design aesthetic. But I do understand why Samir would say this is the most impactful change since that happened, because it does make it, it is reaching out so further into the tendrils of the operating system. Michael, I'm really curious what you think of the new look with Android 12 beta. What do you think of the new chunky Android?
Oh, so I have so many thoughts about this because,
awesome.
As you know, I'm super enthusiastic about material design. It's one of the things I'm passionate about from way back when. So when that came out, that really unified apps. So they were almost constrained to really really constrained to the material system. So all things kind of look the same, or at least they really fit a set pattern. And I think this evolution now, what it seems to me is it's all, instead of the apps all kind of looking the same all the time, apps are now going to change based on context. So it could be based on your wallpaper. So now that your own app might have color theming based on a wallpaper, perhaps time of day or some other things coming up. You could see how that could happen. But anyway, also about accessibility, they said you'd be able to control a lot of things within the app much more closely. So I think what's going to happen now is apps themselves are going to change a lot more themselves. So instead of an app looking the same all the time, apps now are going to start changing a lot. This could be interesting.
Yeah, and it's it almost reminds me of what we saw a couple of years ago with the introduction of the dark theme and the light theme, and picking up the context of, okay, it's nighttime, switch to dark mode. You don't have to self-select it, and the idea of having the interface alter with you based on your surroundings or your context or the app you're using. I do think that's really, really interesting. I don't know, Jason, now that it's official, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I am definitely looking forward to it. I think, yes, it's hyperbole for him to say that this is the biggest change. I would actually agree with what you said, Ron. Material design was the biggest, version to version, totally pull the rug out from underneath what was there and give you a new look.
It was a redesign. It was a redesign.
Yeah. This feels kind of like an evolution of material design. What I think is really what I'm excited about is just the cross-device customization between this. They kind of hinted at a Nest device and, your Chromecast with Google TV and your smartphone all being part of this kind of connected personalization network. And I'm curious to see how seamlessly that operates, whether that's something that I actually want. If I had a Nest thermostat in my house, would I want it to reflect the shade of purple that my UI elements on my phone suddenly turned to because of the wallpaper I had installed? I don't know, but I'm curious to see what that looks like in action. That might actually be kind of cool when I turn my TV on, to have some sort of synergy between the view of what's up there and what's on my phone. That, I don't know, that is new, but at the same time, a lot of these elements, you're right. It's kind of a next step for material design. and I do have a version, or I have the first beta running on my phone right now, which is, I don't know, it's maybe limited compared to, if you do the overhead shot, compared to what we're going to get later. So, they did release the beta. I mean, this looks normal, right? Like, and actually the power button still gives me the power, the power control menu. So I think that's going to come at a later time. But where you really see some of these differences is the pull down. You get the current theme, which I'm not sure where the color pattern is on this theme. I don't think that they have the wallpaper kind of conforming color palette going yet on this. And mind you, I haven't had a whole lot of time to play around with it because I've been producing Security Now leading up to this show as well. But you've got some of the elements, the larger kind of the larger slider, which at first when I saw that on some of the leaked photos, I thought looked dumb. But the more I think about it, the more I actually kind of like it, because sometimes these things are really hard to grab with a finger, and having it a little bit larger makes a lot of sense. Although you lose a lot of space in
it just looks so thick. It just looks so thick.
Yeah, thick's a good word for it. Yeah, absolutely.
THICC.
So that's what you're going to start seeing is lots of big thick lines and shapes like that. Also had that big purple shape.
Yeah.
That's, I think, that kind of what the new language is going to be, like lots of big shapes. I don't know how to say it any other way.
Yeah. Big purple shapes. The future of Android, big purple shapes.
Big purple shapes or blue shapes
change the whole
or pink shapes.
Change the whole design theme of the show from green to purple.
Yeah. But, and some of the changes coming to widgets and how widgets are going to look. I mean, again, it really will come down to how much developers adopt some of this new language as well. And even with material design, when that first happened, it took a while to get some cohesion going.
Yep.
And I'm concerned that we're going to experience that again. And then you're going to be living kind of in both worlds, some old looking widgets compared to the new looking widgets and stuff like that. Mike, from a developer perspective, I mean, once again, this is more work for a developer to do, but is there enough incentive? Like, do you think developers are going to get excited about reduxing their apps to conform to some of these new rules?
I mean, it's the same as always. Hopefully there will be a consumer demand for it, which will drive us needing to do it, but there's going to be a lot of work. And the same as always, Android, I mean, this is a little bit inside baseball, but a big thing I think we're not even talking about here that's coming to Android is Compose, which is a whole new UI layout, a whole new layout container. And that's really inside baseball. But the reason I bring it up now is it is not going to be Material U compliant right out of the gate. Right. Just like previous times where even when they introduced Material the first time, there was all sorts of interesting components. In fact, I don't think we even had a fab component when Material was first introduced.
Right. No, I think you're right. I don't think that we did. I think I remember that.
That's like the main thing, that was one of the signature components. So it's going to be the same this time around.
Okay.
It's all really neat. It's just going to be work for the developer to implement.
Right. Interesting. Well, best case scenario, I'm optimistic.
It's work that I like doing.
Yeah.
So I am optimistic and I welcome it. It seems really fun and neat.
Yeah.
Like the UI looks great. So.
And look, hey, we had the opportunity to see Matias Duarte once again. And it had been a while, Matias. Thank you for bringing your design aesthetic to Android and for blessing the stage with your amazing shirt and talking about it. He's so smart with this stuff. He literally puts his a nice solid fingerprint on a lot of the stuff. Not to give him all of the
no, but you need some level of vision. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say you need some level of vision, and he's where it's at. And so I think that was great. So.
Yeah. Other changes in Android 12 involving privacy. There's going to be toggles in the quick settings. So to back up what you were saying, Ron, the power control menu that we currently have that Google just introduced on Android 11 going away in Android 12, which to me at the onset is a bummer because I use that all the time for controlling my smart home, my most used smart home devices like lights in the bedroom or the living room or whatever, the thermostat. Instead, those are going to go into the quick settings. So that power control menu is shifting. Like you said, the power button hold down action is going to transition into being an assistant call. I hope that there's a setting to revert that because that's what I do on Samsung phones that turn that into a Bixby button. I hate it, but I understand why they want to do it. They're moving away from the swipe up from the corner and into your phone to summon assistant, which I always felt was kind of kludgy and dumb. You know, a lot of people don't even know that it does that. So anyways, but all that's moving into the thick quick settings menu. And then we're also going to get a bunch of privacy and security features going in there as well. For example, you're going to get some toggles that allow you to turn off camera and mic to the system completely. So you can say, you know, if you're paranoid that there's an app on your phone, and you want to make sure that no app has access to your phone to your camera at all. That quick setting, you just deactivate access to the camera for everything. And on a system level, it turns it off. That's great. If an app asks to use it once you've done that, you actually get a pop-up menu that says, hey, this app wants to use your camera. You've turned it off. Would you like to grant it? So that's great. New location setting for either using precise or approximate location, because things like weather, for example, don't have to be specific to your house. It can just be more broadly defined as I'm in Petaluma. So that's nice. A new privacy dashboard that shows how often a few specific permissions are used. So location, microphone, camera. It says these have been used X amount of times in the last 24 hours. These are the apps that have accessed them. So you can have some more tools to kind of dial into, okay, what's going on behind the scenes? Oh, I didn't know that app actually had access to that. I didn't want that. And you can revert. So nice stuff there. And then underneath, they mentioned the Android Private Compute Core. This is a part of the OS for doing AI computations on device. It's locked away in its own sandbox. Definitely heard a lot about kind of moving some of this compute stuff onto the device, out of the cloud. This is not the first I.O. that we've heard about that sort of thing, but it sounds like they're moving more in that direction. So, for example, using the mic for now playing when you want to identify music, that would be inside of the APCC, so it wouldn't be sending that data anywhere, which it's not right now, but you would have more insight into how that's going or how that's happening underneath. The only other thing that was missing was that Apple has been, we've been hearing a lot of news about app tracking and details in app tracking and how that might, be integrated into Google Play. Hopefully at some point, Apple's doing this with their App Store and they're getting a lot of news for this. We don't have any specific information as far as when Google might do that, but Samir Samat did tell The Verge that they're sharing more on this later this year. So privacy-wise, do you like what you're seeing? Does this kind of answer some questions that you have as far as privacy on Android? What do you think, Mike?
So that was a super comprehensive overview. Well done. The only thing that you missed, or you didn't miss, but was that they unbundled the Bluetooth permission from the location permission, which was a problem before. They had it tied from Bluetooth beacons, but that has now been separated, and that was a big pain point for both consumers and developers that had that tied together when they didn't need both of those together. So
okay,
that's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, this is just Google continuing to try to batten down the hatches after this is just an ongoing issue. Privacy, security with Android especially, it's an open platform, so it's going to be exposed to more risk as far as that's concerned. And Google is trying to kind of keep pace with Apple, which has a lot more control over their platform, over their ecosystem. So they're just able to they're able to do this in a more meaningful way. Google, I think, will, to a certain degree, will always be playing a little bit of catch up when compared, between them.
Yeah, and not specifically related to Android, but earlier in the keynote, they did mention that they were going to now save your history for only 18 months, and that was defaulted to on, which is interesting. And I don't know if you caught that, but they were saying that's for privacy, but I think that has lots of other implications as well, not just privacy, but lots of other reasons why parsing your data after 18 months is good for them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So cool stuff there. And then Ron, round us out.
Yeah, a little tidbits of Android 12 to pick up here before we move on. This is pretty neat for those of us who've got the new Android TV with Chromecast with Android TV or vice versa that comes with the remote. Now you don't have to worry if you ever lose it, because they rolled out the ability for your Android TV remote to work within your phone. So that's pretty cool. So basically, you can control your Google TV with your phone in Android 12. That ties back into, Jason, what you were talking about the cross-device kind of like Google knows it's you, and you can control your devices with that. With the phone as the central hub, and you can control your devices wherever you are. This just plays into it, and I think as a owner of an Android TV with Chromecast or whatever, with the little remote, which honestly, that remote isn't perfect. I don't like where the volume is. Anyway. I
hear so many people say they love that remote. So
I don't really love that remote. Anyway. But I just watched Tenet. Anyway. Okay, cool. So for those of us watching on the video, there's a little demo of the remote working, and it was the home screen said Tenet, which I just watched. It was a good movie. In addition, in terms of cars and auto tech, Android 12 will support NFC and UWB support for unlocking vehicles, which basically turns your phone into your car key, which is pretty cool stuff from the future and horrifying in case you lose your phone. But they've also got improved fast pair for Bluetooth with Ford, BMW, and Beats. So you're seeing that fast pair for Bluetooth working with more and more external partners, which is great, because the one thing is that you want that fast pair of Bluetooth to work very quickly. And the key thing here, and as we know, as Jason was showing it off, Beta 1 is available now. Anyone running the Pixel 3 through the Pixel 5 can install Beta 1 at this very moment. So if you haven't done it yet, go get on that. I haven't done it yet. I'm deciding, because I mentioned in a recent episode, I cracked my screen on my Pixel 3a. I'm thinking of getting another Pixel 3a, and I might have the cracked screen run the beta, but I haven't figured that out yet. But anyway, so fun times. So Michael, in terms of like all these things with Android 12 that we covered, from security and privacy to the design to fast pairing of Bluetooth and controlling your car and TVs and things like that, I get the sense you're optimistic about Android 12. Are you excited in the direction it's going?
Sure. I always am, especially this time of year, right? This is like when we're all like excited about all the new goodies that they promise are so awesome. The car key thing, like I drive a Tesla, and that's one of the features of the app, is a super useful feature. It's one of those things that you never knew you needed.
Yeah, so, right.
Like you may be like dubious, but is that useful?
Well, with the Tesla also, you can use your app to like unlock your car or from while you're inside, like heat up your car or something like that. I wonder if any of those expanded features would come to Android for partners, and not just narrowing in on, you're in front of the door, we'll unlock and open the door for you or something. But although that is really neat too.
Right. You would like to see some of those features expand though. That's a great venue to Android to make it happen.
Yeah, indeed. That would be a big additional feature for Android Auto or whatever. So really cool stuff. So that's Android 12 in a nutshell. And again, like a lot of this we kind of already knew, but it's kind of nice to see Google package it a little bit neater. And now, of course, we have more direct access to it running on our phones if we have Pixels and can run the beta. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm happy to see a big change, even though I know we were saying it's kind of like an evolution of material design. It's a pretty dramatic evolution. I would say this is more than an iteration. This is a chapter break. Good,
for sure.
Good, because it's about time.
I agree.
I think now it might even be overdue, but we'll give Google a pass on last year, because last year was hard for everybody. So at least they didn't just sit around for the year. They it seems, use that time pretty effectively. So
I really do think it's going to change the way that we interact with our phones a little bit, at least on the OS level, in the way that the phone will start to change and be more dynamic. And I think that's going to add some delight when, your phone isn't the same every time you look at it.
Yeah, totally.
As long as they don't make it like, oh my God, why can I never find what I'm looking for? Why is it always so different? But some of these subtle delights, I think will add a new, a lot of fun.
Totally. Kind of spice it up a little bit. Yeah, I don't envision things shifting around their place, but if they're shifting color, I might opt to put on some sort of automatic, every day new new wallpaper thing just for that, because then it's not just the wallpaper that's changing. It's all of the UI elements gives me something to kind of, I don't know, look forward to a certain degree every time I turn on my phone for the first time today.
I was thinking that very exact same thing today, that I don't have that feature installed on my phone, and that I would do that just for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paper.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we're done taking that break, we're going to talk all about Wear and Wear OS, because there's some big news that is very fascinating that we could talk about. But first, this episode of All About Android is brought to you by an app that I use, that I love. It's Headspace. And, I'm relatively new to meditating as a wellness practice, probably in the last, I'd say 2 to 3 years. It took me a while to kind of get in the mode, but Headspace was what I used in the beginning and continue to use and it's not only an effective app for learning how to meditate, because they have all of these different kind of courses on the inside of the app and everything, but it's just a good way to it's like a really flexible meditation app, because really based on how little time you have, or if you have a lot of time, you're like, you know what, I'm going to do a 20-minute meditation. I'm ready to really, go inside. I mean, you have the flexibility to do that. So it's really cool. So it's a pocket-sized guide that's going to help you sleep. It's going to help you focus, act, be better. And like I said, if you have 10 minutes, that's all you really need. Headspace can change your life. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations in an easy-to-use app. The app is incredibly easy to use. Whatever the situation is, Headspace can really just help you feel better. And, if you're overwhelmed, well, you can use Headspace in a number of ways, but they have a 3-minute SOS meditation for you. It's kind of like a 3-minute meditation where it's like, stop everything that's going on right now. I just need 3 minutes to take a breather and recalibrate. And you can do that. If you need some help falling asleep, Headspace has some wind down sessions that their members swear by. For parents, maybe you enjoy meditating and you want to show your kids what it's all about. Well, Headspace even has morning meditations that you can do with your kids to show them what it's like to take care of themselves, to practice some mindfulness. Self-care is important, and that's a skill that's definitely valuable to teach to kids at a young age. Headspace's approach to mindfulness can reduce stress. It can improve sleep, boost your focus, increase your overall sense of well-being. For a mood-boosting workout, check out Headspace Move. 30 days of Headspace lowers stress by 32%, and just 4 sessions can reduce burnout by 14%. Like I said, I use Headspace. I love it. I've used a lot of different meditation avenues. Sometimes I just meditate without listening to anything. The only reason that I'm able to do that is because I've used Headspace for as long as I have, and they have this Pro series. They have this Basics series and then this Pro series, and each of those series has 10 different lesson's probably the wrong word, but, it kind of starts with a little bit of an introduction as far as a challenge that often comes up in meditation. And then you're kind of led into your meditation. You have 10, 15 minutes, however long you choose to kind of practice that. It's a practice. And so I only know how to meditate without listening to anything because I went through all those lessons and I learned through Headspace. It's that effective. Headspace is backed by 25 published studies on its benefits, 600,000 5-star reviews, over 70 million downloads. That's a lot of millions. Headspace makes it easy for you to build a life-changing meditation practice with mindfulness that works for you on your schedule, anytime, anywhere. All you have to do is make time for it. And once you do, you'll realize how valuable it is, and you'll do it again. You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/AAA. That's headspace.com/AAA. Do that. You'll get a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. And that's a lot of access there. This is the best deal offered right now. Head to headspace.com/AAA today. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. And we thank Headspace for their support of All About Android. That's right. They even have a TV show on Netflix. So you can watch on Netflix to get a sense of it as well. All right. We're going to jump into hardware, but not the normal hardware. This is like the wearable hardware. Let's do it.
Now I will give them this, that
Yes.
in my criticism of Google I/O being a little underwhelming, I did not have this on my bingo card.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys did or not, but or all the details of this. This was surprising.
Yeah, it was pretty surprising. I mean, we knew there was something cooking with Wear. We had some clues. Namely, we had heard at some point there was a leak that Samsung's next Galaxy Watch 4, I think is what it's called, was going to be Wear OS and not Tizen. That was a rumor, unsubstantiated, but definitely a lot of action and dialogue around that. We also knew that there were a couple of events, a couple of online events with Google I/O that were named Wear and not Wear OS. And so it was like, okay, well, so there's obviously going to be a name change. If there's a name change, maybe that means there's going to be some revitalized new energy put into it. What does that look like? Well, we found out at Google I/O, Wear OS is getting a new life. Google has aligned with Samsung. And so they're effectively combining Wear OS and Samsung's efforts with Tizen OS on their wearables, which, by the way, have been incredibly successful. Samsung has done really well with their wearables. I think that I would imagine they're second behind Apple, although maybe there's a fitness brand that fits that spot, but I'm pretty certain it's Samsung. As far as Android, compatible or Android friendly wearables are concerned, Samsung's wearables are really kind of at the top of the list. So Samsung has agreed to enter into this relationship with Google, and they're essentially merging their efforts. Also includes Fitbit. Of course, Google now owns Fitbit, and we were wondering, where does the Venn diagram of Fitbit and Wear OS cross? Well, Fitbit's going to be releasing some new Wear devices coming up. It's going to be interesting to see how the fitness side of Fitbit merges with Wear OS. But really, I think what's really interesting here is that, I think Samsung's done really great things with its wearable version of Tizen. And Google has recognized that they are not doing well in the wearable space. So when you've got Samsung, Fitbit, and Google all together creating one unified effort in wearables, like, man, you're coming up with something that's really compelling. So I'm really looking forward to this. I know that Google is using this as a way to revamp and kind of relaunch Wear and get people excited about it again. Certainly worked for me. I'm excited to see what this leads to. Curious to know what you guys think. Who wants to go first?
I didn't see it coming. I'll say it. Didn't see it coming. I mean, it's funny because how many years ago now, Jason, were we just all about Tizen?
Yeah, well, I could do a search and find that out. But yeah, it's probably, I'm guessing probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, I think that was longer. I think we have to do that search. I mean, I guess this is good, but part of me wonders how much of this is both Google and Samsung coming together saying, hey, it's not working, disjointed. Let's try to make this kind of feels like a last gasp. If you could take it from a half empty last gasp kind of approach.
So that's a good segue to my pessimism, I guess, about this. So you mentioned Samsung, Google, and Fitbit all coming together. It's worth mentioning that the Samsung devices and the Google devices are written with different operating systems. Tizen versus Android. And Tizen is probably the better of those for this particular application. And I don't know what Fitbit OS is written in. So anyway, I hope that they can leverage this integration and make it super awesome. Because they offered some cool things like sleep tracking. I could see how they integrate that with the Google Home, the new Google Home that does sleep tracking. And suddenly now you have a really robust like health picture starting to form.
Yeah, no kidding.
I like to see it, and I hope it is successful.
Yeah. So by the way, All About Tizen, No Really was the title of episode 172 from July 29th, 2014. So there we go. You were right. That was more than 5 years.
That was a very long time ago. That's
different era. But specifically, so basically, Google is touting, thanks to Samsung's partnership, improvements to battery life, which has long been a Wear OS Achilles heel, especially compared to Samsung's offerings. So Samsung's helping them with that. 30% faster load times, smoother animations. I think in general, you're going to see, at least on Google's reference version of Wear, you're going to see a lot of synergy, buzzword, between Material You on the phone and the watch. So you're going to have kind of those things speak in a similar design language. All using what Google said was, quote, the latest chipsets. They didn't indicate what that actually means. They didn't mention if that was actually the Qualcomm Snapdragon Wear 4100, which was launched last year, but I think only like 1 or 2 watches ever have used it, even though it's a big step up from its predecessor. And who knows, maybe Google, we know about Google's Whitechapel chip. Would Google create a wearable chip? I mean, I haven't heard anything officially or unofficially about that, but something to ponder. Samsung's watch face designer tool is going to come to Wear. And ultimately, what this means for Samsung, because that was my question. It's like, all right, I see what Google gets out of this. What does Samsung get out of this? And I guess out of this, Samsung gets, really, they get access to app support because they did not have the Google Play Store on their watches when they were running Tizen. Now they'll have access to that. Still, though, it kind of seems a little imbalanced because Samsung, I feel like, was doing pretty darn good with their wearables. So what's going on here? Why? I don't know that I have the answer.
I guess it depends if if this is for selling hardware or software, because just like with cell phones, this watches need to be a platform with all sorts of watch face support and apps, supporting it. So I don't know who wants to sell what, but Samsung wants to sell devices. So
that's true.
Support what you're saying,
that makes sense. So one big difference that we're going to get out of this Wear switch is that Google says that there's going to be the ability for device manufacturers to customize. And Wear OS was kind of like Android Auto in the sense that, and Android TV, in the sense that it was a platform that Google looked at Android and said, oh, there's too much customization going on. That results in fragmentation. We need to lock that down. So therefore, here's Google Wear, or Android Wear, I think was the initial name. And all Android Wear devices are going to look the same, but this is just going to be different hardware. Now they're kind of going the opposite direction, saying, hey, with the new Wear, yes, you can customize this to match your brand. So it'll be interesting to see if that revitalizes things because it gives these watches a little more personality, or if it makes things worse from a fragmentation standpoint, because anytime you do that, you introduce another roadblock for updates to Android to not quite make it to the watch in time because you've got that kind of customization layer in the mix there, and that's going to slow things down. I don't know if that's going to make a huge difference, but anytime that's an issue with Android, it kind of sucks. So I don't know.
Yeah, but
Ron doesn't know either.
Hereby co-signed.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
that works.
Pretty much, yeah,
that
pretty
works.
Much it. I'd be curious to see what this does. Jason, we have to remember next week when Flo is on the show to get her take on this, because I'm sure that she has got lots of opinions on this move and this kind of this chase. And I mean, I don't. Like I don't know for sure that Samsung. I know Samsung's smartwatch products have way more product, kind of marketplace fit than Google's previous attempts at it. But I go back to my original thought that I don't know that it's enough to move the needle. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
So
I suppose we'll find out. I am looking forward to seeing what comes out of this, though, and I'm looking forward to a Fitbit that has that's running Wear OS. Someone in chat mentioned, and I think I mentioned it briefly, but Fitbit is a really respected brand when it comes to wearables and fitness, and Fitbit is bringing that to the table for this as well. So, does that elevate the new Wear platform's fitness capabilities, which have been pretty lackluster so far? So they're getting the good stuff from Samsung, they're getting the good stuff from Fitbit. Does that create a great watch experience? That's what we don't know yet, but I don't know. Sounds pretty positive. I'm looking forward to it, and I am definitely curious to hear what Flo has to say about this next week. So I'll have to check in with her on that. Ron,
right.
Yeah, you've got some hardware news, but the other kind of hardware, we don't need to play bumper. But
it's okay.
No one's going to get this.
This is more speculative. But I will say that, when we're speculating about what Google I/O was going to bring, and Sundar was saying it was going to be significant and all this sort of stuff, and we saw those leaked renders of a potential Pixel 6, right? I got my hopes up a lot for some new hardware that wasn't watches. That didn't come to pass, but I was hoping for something related. Remember, we were talking about big screens and is there going to be a new tablet or TV interface or something like that? Nothing there. Yeah. But nothing foldable, nothing rollable. Come on, you got to Google, you got to give me something. Also not on my bingo card did I have holographic video conferencing. Yeah. But sure enough, at the very end of the keynote, they did show off some crazy new tech that they call Project Starline, that utilizes high resolution cameras and built-in and custom built depth sensors to basically make a video conferencing system that looks like you're looking through a window at the person you're talking to, almost like one of you is in jail. And the other way, you're visiting somebody in jail.
That's one way to look at it. Yes. Yeah,
doesn't it? That's how it kind of looks at it. But it is a very kind of you're sitting across from someone and you can make eye contact, and it is as if very cool tech. It is early in development. Is not available. I mean, more than likely it will never be available, but this is what they're working on with all their 3D sensors and cameras and big displays and things like this to show kind of the future of what communication could be thanks to Google. And we'll see where it goes, but they're working on it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is one of those things that's next to impossible to show with any sort of faith to what the experience is actually like in a recorded video. Because what we see when we look at this video is we see a screen kind of similar to any screen that we ever look at. The only thing that seems different is that they're looking straight into each other's eyes. And what's fascinating about this, so it's light field display technology. And so that's what creates this in-person kind of 3D effect. So to their eyes, they're seeing a person on the other side more or less in a three-dimensional way. But what's also interesting about this is that Google's neural network is reconstructing the person on the other end and basically giving you a virtual representation of them. Even though it looks real, this is their reconstruction of real in real time. And
so did you watch the show Devs?
No, I've never seen that.
Michael, did you watch Devs?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So Jason, you should watch Devs also because it's good. It was done by Alex Garland, the guy who did the movie Ex Machina. Did you see that? The one of AI, right? Mm-hmm. So, and it's a limited series. I think it was on FX or AMC. I think it was FX.
On Hulu.
Yeah, so now it's on Hulu. So it was on FX. Yeah, it was on FX. But it's about a Bay Area tech company that has created some technology that is basically it's hard to explain, but this looks a hell of a lot like what they built on that show.
It's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, Jason, and everyone listening, I would strongly suggest that it was a really, really good limited series, especially if you're into the Bay Area and startup tech and all that sort of stuff. But cool.
I would also add that in that the AI computer that they had in devs looked almost identical to the one that they were showing in the keynote today that they wrapped in that blanket. So I don't know how they figured that out, but it looked very much like what a real AI computer looks like.
Oh, is life imitating art or is art imitating life? You just don't know at this point.
I don't know anymore.
That's the way it goes in Silicon Valley, it seems. Very cool stuff, though. I hope someday to actually see it with my two eyes, because I think that would be pretty interesting. All right. Up next, some I/O app news. Yeah, we can play the bumper too.
What's life without the bumper? Come on, yeah. So
that was a fast intro. Sorry, I caught you flat-footed there.
Your first time back in the studio. It's gonna happen. Burke's not used to seeing other people for the past year and 2 months. He's been just living at the control desk. So this is all new to him. So love you, Burke. Email of the week.
Oh, that's really catching him flat-footed. We don't even have an email block today. But at least we got that in.
So Michael, when we were talking at the top of the show about things we're excited to see in I/O, you mentioned LaMDA, which is, I agree, is very, very cool. In fact, LaMDA could possibly be the future of the Google Assistant. Conversational language AI that allows for free-flowing dialogue in a natural and nuanced way. It demonstrated this by having LaMDA. Well, this is where, Michael, your criticism came in, but still, it's cool. That LaMDA be either the planet Pluto or a paper airplane, as Michael, you talked about earlier. In the example, Pluto was asked, "Tell me what I would do if I visited," to which Pluto responded, "You would get to see a massive canyon, some frozen icebergs, geysers, and some craters." Our good dear friend Flo is not here, called this robot LARP on Twitter.
I love that. It's perfect.
Which was very funny. And Google also announced MUM, a multitask unified model that understands multiple forms of information, such as text, images, and videos, and offers direct insight because of that context. In an example, AI could answer questions like, "I want to take a hike to Mount Fuji next fall. What should I do to prepare?" And this is the kind of next level stuff that is going to take Assistant and take the way we interface with our devices to the, beyond the ask a question, get an answer, give a directive, have a result happen. It's that nuanced. It was funny because I was listening to a podcast recently. Surprise, surprise. It's called Star Wars Minute, in case you're not familiar with it. It's where they analyze the Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time. And it was, they were talking about the movie Last Jedi, but they're talking specifically about the level of AI that exists in the Star Wars universe. And specifically the moment in, I think it's Empire Strikes Back, where C-3PO is babbling and Han Solo just points at him with an angry face. And C-3PO understands that means he should stop talking because Han is mad at him, and saying, if you think about the processing power it takes to compute that I'm interpreting an angry face and a finger pointed at me, and he never said stop talking or I'm mad at you or anything like that. That nuanced body language kind of stuff that happens in conversation. That's the stuff that makes AI get scary when it becomes science fiction into reality. And LaMDA is a step and MUM is a step in that direction, I think, towards where we actually have really conversational, human-like interactions with these devices. So Michael, I know you shared your thoughts earlier about the paper plane example, but putting that aside, do you see this as potentially, kind of changing the way? Could this get to a point in Assistant where we're talking to our Google Homes or our phones as we would talk to one another?
So before I answer that question, I'm just going to say LaMDA as a name is awful for coders. That's like a term we use so much. I don't know why they could not come up with a better name. Even non-developers probably know that's an overloaded coding term. The second half is I'm not sure I'm too overwhelmed with this. It's kind of more of the same that we saw even 2 years ago when they had the assistant making phone calls and interacting. So I think it's just kind of more of the same. It's really cool stuff, and it's the evolution of kind of, AI chat, but nothing surprising to me.
Can I tell you, just today, in fact, I called my mortgage company, and I got in the Pixel phone the assistant saying, let us be on hold for you. Like the where the assistant will be on hold and let you know when the call comes back, and I didn't have the guts to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I find myself in the same situation when put in that position.
Yep. Yeah. So, what will this change, or what has to come to give us the confidence in the AI to trust it to talk on the phone for us, right?
I think what's interesting to me about this, like what automatically came up to my mind, was not that I would be using this in Google Assistant, but that this because I just. There's a block inside of me that I feel like it would be very difficult for me to find myself in a situation where I have a conversation with my AI. Like, maybe this is just short-term thinking, or like, narrow view, and I'm not looking at the potential of the future where I feel comfortable with it. I suppose there was a time where even just asking my phone a question and getting an answer, that felt weird, and now that doesn't feel so weird. But I still limit my interaction with it. I'm still like, yeah, okay, I got the information. Now it's time for me to get out. I don't want to sit there for 2 minutes and have a conversation with AI. Having said that, I thought this was a really impressive demonstration. And again, this was in the first half. So this is in the first half that when I was watching it, I was like, okay, this is all really neat. We're probably, it's probably going to be a long time before we see this stuff. It was impressive. I don't know how it impacts my life in a direct way, but I look forward to like whatever the future is where we actually have, Jetsons robots floating around our house with any regularity. And then I go, okay, well, I mean, if you're taking that science fiction version, cartoony reality, this would be the technology. This would be the starting point for that technology. So I guess that's kind of neat. I just don't know how much interest I have in having a conversation with Google Assistant for 2 minutes about something. Yeah.
Fair.
Like, maybe my kids, though, and maybe that's the difference, right? My kids might have a lot of interest in something like this. And I bet you if they were given the opportunity to have this conversation, they'd have a blast with it. And if that's the case, then that sets the stage for their entire life, with that being the beginning point of this technology developing into whatever it does over the course of their lifetime. So that could be kind of exciting. Let's see here. What else? Google Photos. One of the best apps that Google has, in my opinion. I still use it all the time, even though they didn't mention that in a couple of weeks, I think the whole free unlimited photos goes away. Anyways, they kept a lot secret, that included. But Photos is getting a few new and interesting features, new personalized memories. So they explain this as tying the memories feature, which is kind of like where they wrap things up and they say, see how much this person has changed, and it shows like a picture of them before, when they were younger and older, and kind of everything in between. Here's all the photos of that person or whatever. Well, now they're expanding it to be personalized in ways where the AI recognizes patterns inside of the photos, which could be great, could also be scary depending on what photos you have. But things like shapes, colors, themes. They made the example of going on a hike and there was a person with a bright orange backpack. That's what we're seeing on the screen right now, and how it's able to create a collection around that person with the bright orange backpack. The AI recognized the pattern. It created a collection. Is that useful to you? I have no idea, but neat nonetheless. But what I thought was really interesting with the cinematic moments, where essentially it takes two very similar photos. Like I did this just last night. My parents were in town, hadn't seen them in over a year. Hadn't seen them in almost 2 years. And so last night was their last night here, and on the front step, I'm like, let's take a photo, in front of our house. And so I held up the camera, and I probably took like 10 photos, right? Because I wanted to be sure that one of those photos was going to be the one where our smiles were great, where everything was awesome. Well, what Cinematic Moments does is it takes two similar photos like that, and then it analyzes with the AI, it analyzes the two images, the similarities, the differences, and maybe how the head is tilted and that sort of stuff. And it fills in the gaps. So it animates these photos between the two photos. So what you end up with is this small, it's almost like live photos. Like when you take a photo and then you look in your camera reel and it kind of has like a short burst of video before it shows you the photo. It animates still images. And so this almost seems like, deep fake, kind of an example of a consumer deep fake product, essentially.
I think it's better than the live image, though, because like the images that we're just seeing on the screen, where like you can see the actual still image is moving, the smile is actually changing into a smile. Like it's not just a perspective change or a parallax effect.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than that. And it's pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, especially because a lot of the live photos that I end up seeing are the shaky moments of the camera leading right up to taking the picture. So at least here you've got two solid, stable pictures. And sure, that animation like that didn't necessarily happen exactly like that, but you're going to get a nice kind of presentable, aesthetically pleasing result, as long as it doesn't look all fake and weird in those, in those frames in between. But it is interesting, very interesting.
I will say that this does. I've been getting more and more of the current cinematic photos in my Google Photos kind of assistant, and pictures of my kids, and it kind of does. Oh, I just triggered assistant on my phone. It's lighting up and now it's recording everything I'm saying, and I'm watching the words run across the bottom of my phone as I talk about it, and it just keeps going, and it's going to give me a great search result now because it's just not going to stop, and it just keeps going with the little lights. And oh wow, it's spelled cuz C-U-Z, not C-A-U.
Yeah, it does that for me too sometimes.
That's crazy. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen when I stop talking, but I've been getting more and more of those cinematic photos. And even though they are a single photo, it's not stitching together the multiple photos in this way. Some of them are pretty dang cool. Like a shot of my daughter on the lawn, and she kind of gets closer, and it does the kind of Scorsese rack focus effect. And it's neat to see them evolving that. I love Google Photos. I think it's fantastic what they do. Now let's see what happens.
Indeed. Also, a locked folder feature coming to Google Photos, and finally, and this was good. Google spent some time recognizing just how so often these photo systems are not very representative or not very friendly to people of color. They're not designed to be. Historically, technology like this has not been designed with people of color in mind. So they took some time in the presentation to kind of call that out and to basically show that they are consulting with 15 image makers to really focus on addressing computational processing to better reflect non-white skin tones. And one of the examples that they gave has to do with kind of like the bokeh effect and certain hairstyles not being captured appropriately. And as we've heard time and time again, a lot of this comes down to not using models that are representative of a wide number of people, and minority groups included. So that's a good effort on Google's part to pay attention to that. Definitely optimistic about that. So we'll see what that results in as well.
Very cool to see. And also, so the Google Assistant finished parsing everything I was saying, and it just said, I didn't catch that. Try again.
The best answer that Google Assistant could ever give.
So in relation to the bias in machine learning, and I don't want to get too political or too deep into this, but Google has a huge way to go in this regards.
Yeah.
And many levels, in particular, I want to call it like Timnit, Gebrew, and
yes.
Google has some real issues with basically, and I don't know, they certainly couldn't handle it at Google I/O, but I do want to kind of make it clear that there's some real challenges relating to how Google's handling bias in AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Wesley Faulkner.
I know this is not the right forum for that necessarily, but anyway.
Yeah,
no. Just because they're doing some neat photo stuff.
Completely agree. Wesley Faulkner talked about this last week on the show. Or a few weeks ago on All About Android. Last week on Twit, he talked about this as well. We were wondering if they were even going to mention any of that, and I assumed if they were going to do it up at the top of the show. So I suppose at least they brought this topic into a part of it. But you're right; they've got a long way to go. And even in chat, Cousin Rajah is saying it was kind of a cop out to mention it just like this and not in any other meaningful way. So they do have a long way to go. Absolutely. Ron, you got the next one.
I would think that probably right behind Google Photos is one of the most used or productive Google apps on our phones is Google Maps, right? I think we can all agree that Google Maps is one of the mainstays. And as they talked about Google Maps during I/O, the direction they've taken with it is making Google Maps more detailed. Maps is going to be getting more safety aware. So, for example, using braking info in intersections to show how unsafe it might be there, and then routing vehicles around that area as a result, which is crazy. For pedestrians, crosswalks will now be shown, which is super helpful if you are a pedestrian, because sometimes, you don't know where the crosswalk is, and that can be helpful to find out. Also, they've added quote unquote area busyness features that show how busy certain areas are. And overall, maps will show more detailed contextual info. And all of this was created with a combo of satellite imagery, street view, and computational movement data, which when you think about it, all of us carrying our phones and Google tracking where we're going and how we're doing and dumping that into their mainframes and their machines and calculating it actually benefits you when you see an intersection and you're like, oh, wow, that's a really busy intersection. I should avoid it. Or this time of day, it's going to be tough to go through. This is the end result of years and years and years and years of data of people just walking around with Android phones in their pocket, which is fascinating. Now, that said, this does limit the rollout initially. They are targeting 50 cities by the end of the year. But even then, I think that's a huge sea change in terms of like the number of cities supported and the type of data that they're allowing, and just showing how Google Maps is becoming more and more contextually aware and more powerful to help you guide you from point A to point B. So this is pretty cool. I think at least
50 cities is a lot, because the nuance of this is that we probably only need this in the biggest 50 city. I mean, I don't know.
You just need it in New York.
How many the biggest cities are?
New York and San Francisco. That's all you need. That's fine.
That's right. So
I'm sorry, Chicago people. More. I'm sorry. I
mean, there are many places we could need this, but I would think 50 is covering the biggest 50 cities in the world, and that it covers a lot of places, and all this data is amazing.
I mean, when you think about it, 50 cities is a lot, and it's a lot of people, and more than likely, like I don't recall the list, but I got to imagine. Let me see if we can pull it up. But it's gonna be, like the example here was in New York, so you got to imagine it's New York City, right? And then they're gonna do cities that have where this is valuable. Like, no offense to a lower populated area, but London, New York, Paris. Like Chicago, like that sort of thing. I think those are the kind of cities that we'll see in this, and taking a global approach to it. This is the neat stuff that they do.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see here. And finally, I thought this was interesting. Chrome for Android getting a much better password, or getting improvements to their password manager, the built-in password manager, new features, including the ability to automate the process of recognizing when you have a bad password for a site and then changing it on the fly. And this is utilizing Assistant on the device. So you're on a site, it knows that your password is bad, like it's on a a list somewhere, like, okay, you need to change this password. Using Assistant and Duplex, you can at that moment choose to say, all right, yeah, change my password, and it'll do it for you. And it'll choose a highly secure password, randomized, highly secured password, save it into your password manager within Chrome. And, from what I understand, it's only going to work with supported sites for now. But still, like, that's huge. That's going to help a lot of people because that's such low lift for such huge impact. Yep. You know what I mean? I just wonder how many sites are going to actually support it, but that's pretty awesome. And I know that we're going a little long today, but do you have the breaking news bumper ready? Because I've got some breaking news that I'm going to throw in there right below that link. And if you do,
so exciting!
I'm just gonna keep talking until you suddenly play it. It's breaking news.
Welcome back, Burke.
Yeah,
there it is.
All right, so got some breaking news. This posted not too long ago, a few minutes ago. Scooter X, thank you for posting this into the IRC. 9to5 Google has a story that says the Android 12 beta that just released, that I have installed on my phone, they've been picking it apart, and they have found in there model numbers for the Pixel 6 family. Now, we did mention, and we haven't actually shown the leaks. Maybe we'll show it next week because we don't have time really to do it this week.
Did we talk about it in our chat this week? You're right. We didn't talk about it on the show. You're right.
Yeah, we haven't talked about it on the show, but John Prosser, pretty notable leaker, had a huge leak on the Pixel 6 family. And let me just say, I'm really excited for the Pixel 6 based on what he leaked. A lot of design, like a very unique design coming. Anyways, apparently the beta reveals 4 different models, and 9to5 Google breaks it apart. They say Barbette, the Pixel 5a 5G, the Oriole, the Pixel 6 family, the Raven, the Pixel 6 family. And based on John Prosser's leak, one could argue that one of those is the Pixel 6, and then one of those is the Pixel 6 Pro, I believe is what they call it, which has an extra camera in it, so it would have 3 cameras instead of 2. And then there's a 4th in there, which is the Passport, which is, they are saying, the Pixel Foldable that we've also heard a little bit about here and there. So this could be a really interesting year for Pixel hardware. I'm getting more and more excited. Also, John Prosser posted renders of the Pixel Watch, which is expected to happen as well. All of those renders seem to have like art and a visual representation on the screens that matched each other. So that would tie into what we know about Android 12 and kind of the universal Material U theming. So anyways, something to look forward to in the future.
I do think that we'll see more foldables being pushed. Like, it's kind of a weird form factor, not weird, I guess, but different. Google has been like supporting that actively for, a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I would think we'll continue to see devices coming out. It's kind of like the newest innovation and something that is different that you can do something with.
I wonder if
I welcome it.
Yeah, I wonder if the Samsung relationship collaboration with Google might end up being a part of that, because Samsung's been very successful with their foldable. Well, by comparison, very successful with their foldables to the others in the space. So, anyways, interesting stuff to look forward to there. All right, so up next, we're going to talk about a little of the developer news from Google I/O. All right, so Mike, always enjoy having you on the show for everything. Especially enjoy having you on the show for this because, like I said earlier, I am not a developer. Neither is Ron. Ron, you might even know a little bit more about development stuff than I really do.
I'm developer adjacent. I'm friends with a lot of developers. I often end up in a product role working with developers saying, hey, it should do that and that sort of thing. But I myself am not writing actively code. So,
yeah. So I only caught kind of like the big headlines. So I'm definitely hoping that, Mike, you can kind of fill in the gaps here. Flutter 2.2 announced the developer keynote. The developer keynote followed the Sundar Pichai keynote. Flutter for those who don't know, and I wrote this partially for myself too, because in the press pack that I got these pins, and I saw an F pin, and I was like, oh my goodness, that must be fuchsia, like a dumb blank, and tweeted that out, and then I was corrected by all of the developer fans of the show to say,
I was going to say
fuchsia.
The internet corrected you very quickly. I saw that tweet
very quickly. I was like, okay, yeah, well, I'm not going to delete it because sometimes I make mistakes because I am not a developer. Anyways, it was a Flutter pin. Flutter is an open source UI framework by Google. Obviously, we've heard of Flutter many times. It's hard for me to keep these all straight. They create for creating native mobile apps with a single code base. Did I get that right? About right.
Yep.
Anyways?
So you can deploy to a single code base. You can write once in the language Go. Doesn't matter. And then deploy a native app on Android and iOS.
Nice.
And I think
super useful.
Web too.
Yeah.
I think at least those two platforms.
Absolutely. Okay, so version 2.0 released a few months back. Now we've got 2.2. From what I've read, focus on stability and fine-tuning of what the current features are mostly. But they did also tease that Flutter will support Material You when it launches officially later this year. But this is what you were talking about earlier, right? That it's like that it might not be coming immediately. This doesn't help developers right now get their apps up to speed for the launch.
No, so actually let's talk about this for a second because it's an important nuance of Flutter versus just native Android. So I was mentioning that for native Android, we have Compose coming.
Oh, that's right, Jetpack Compose.
Yep, and so that's something slightly different, and I don't think that's going to, and in fact, we know that's not going to support Material You right out of the box. Flutter is actually written completely native, like it's its own thing. It doesn't rely on the Android code base at all. And they write native views that support Flutter. And it always has historically been better at supporting the material components early. So it probably does have better support for Material You than actual Android for a while.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good news. Now, okay. So then you've got Flutter, and then you've got Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose is more like, it's similar, but this is specific to developing for Android. It's not the cross-platform code once hits everything sort of thing.
Correct. Although that is also nuanced because I think there is the idea that Compose could kind of play this role for many different platforms, but that's future. So for right now, Flutter is really the cross-platform, right? Once run everywhere solution.
Okay. All right. They
Compose maybe someday. Let's talk next year, and we can see if that's.
Well,
the case.
with a stable release in July of 1.1, hopefully this is the beginning of Compose, being a factor of this, right?
Right. And also Compose for desktop and for web and for other platforms.
Right.
Because it's kind of all part of this new Kotlin, this new kind of world of Android, which is more than Android, but it's kind of a little deep. So I don't know if we want to go too far down that path.
Android is more than Android. That's basically that sums it up pretty well, I think, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely. So yes, they tease that Material You coming to Jetpack Compose soon, whatever soon ends up being. Okay, so then between these two, like, do you have a personal preference? I don't know. It in some ways it seems like these things kind of cross the lines into each other's territory.
They really don't. So the developer that is writing this code is using a different language. So Flutter is written with Go.
Right.
So it would be like, one person's writing in Spanish versus, English or something. I mean, whatever. That's not a good analogy, but
I understand.
They're completely different platforms. And a Android developer is not a Flutter developer and vice versa. So they kind of have their own paths.
Is there one that's easier to develop for or with than the other, or it's just really whatever one you learn
depends
is probably
on
the easiest one?
Well, once you start to get deep and need to customize stuff is when the simpler platforms like Flutter may fall apart. So if you're kind of staying in a very simple path, Flutter may have all the components built in. Whereas Android, you may be able to customize more because it is a more robust ecosystem. But I'm not really sure. I believe you probably can customize Flutter easily as well. So it's kind of like just two different ways of doing the same thing that have their pros and cons for each.
And then between these two announcements, because I didn't catch the developer keynote at that point, I was producing Security Now, so I couldn't really tune in to the developer keynote. But between these two announcements, we have a little bit more to touch on. We'll get that in a second. I mean, is there anything here that was particularly exciting to you or developers? Was there a Kotlin moment? I can only point to the Kotlin moment because I remember being at Google I/O and everybody flipping their lid.
And you were probably like, wait, what?
Yeah, well, totally. I was totally, wait, what? I was, that was like my first introduction to what the heck a Kotlin was. But anyways, is there anything here that you were like, okay, developers have been pining for this. This is a long time coming.
No, nothing like that.
Wow.
I personally am excited about the material use stuff, but that's, I think a new design language and more kind of fun tools to mess with is always exciting, but it's not the same as, Kotlin.
Right. That was a seismic shift. Yeah. Seemed by anyways. Cool.
All right. And then lastly, Firebase is getting some new features, and I'm fascinated by this. I'm using Firebase in the Scorbit app infrastructure, so I paid attention when this got announced. But so Firebase is Google's toolkit for integrating apps with the cloud. New Firebase app check can verify themselves prior to connecting with your cloud services. For example, checking if a SIG is valid or if a device is rooted. Firebase app distribution is getting app bundle support, and remote config allows devs to test apps and do A/B tests, kind of like Google likes to do. So, Michael, in your experience as a developer, how important has Firebase become in that app infrastructure kind of stack? Like I said, in my project, I know we're using Firebase for a lot of stuff. It seems to be pretty plugged into a crucial kind of thing. But what's your take?
Oh, it's pretty important. It has lots of different simple features that make life easy, like auth, for instance, and like database, machine learning tools. So it's pretty valuable.
Yep. For sure. Yeah, they've really they took what was used to be like a fragmented, all over the place kind of collection of stuff and kind of brought it all into one kind of suite. And it does make it a lot easier. I know from personal experience it does. So it's nice to see that app check security and the remote config stuff can be really powerful. And A/B testing is always great. So.
It's worth mentioning, though, that most of those things are for pay services. Like most of the Firebase things are cost money. So when you ask if we use those things and if we're reliant on them, yes, but it's maybe reluctantly because it means, we're going to have to pay for all this stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Not that it's terrible to pay for it. You have to pay somebody, but if it's Firebase, it means it's going to cost money.
Yeah.
And you're going to rely on paying that money forever.
Yeah, get used to it. Get used to it, buddy.
Right.
Okay, so all things considered, it's a developer conference. We had the keynote, which we covered at great length. Then we have the developer keynote, which, like I said, wasn't there. These are just some of the highlights that I pulled. I feel like if Google I/O is truly a developer conference, there should be something that's like, holy cow, this Google I/O, I can't, as a developer, I've been waiting for this thing. Am I missing something here, or was it just kind of pretty ho-hum for developers so far?
I think it's always kind of like that. I think there's been a few years where there's something exciting.
Okay.
But I think it's kind of overwhelming. And maybe also I'm jaded because I've seen a lot of things announced that don't ever come to fruition, or it's a year before they're stable. So maybe I'm just old and jaded. That's probably it. I just can't get excited anymore. It's just comes with age.
Well, that is interesting to me, though. I guess I think of Google I/O. I automatically jump to Google I/O as, from the tech enthusiast / journalist / do an Android show perspective, which is like, oh, what's the product, or what is, that sort of thing. And then I'm often reminded, like, no, wait a minute, it's a developer conference. This is about getting developers excited and giving them new tools and new abilities and everything. And so I kind of expected that I'm just missing something. But this, I mean, based on if these are the major announcements, it really does kind of seem kind of like, oh, we'd made some updates. I mean, it's an incremental update, but here you go. And somewhere down the line, we'll have material you support. But anyways, here's some videos to watch. Hope it isn't like that.
That's oddly accurate. Jason, I'll give you credit there.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you for breaking that down for us, Mike. Appreciate that. We're at the end of the episode, but I guess final thoughts before we round this out. I mean, personally, I'm really excited for Android 12. Obviously, that's the thing that I'm going to pay the most attention to is all the Android stuff. And Android 12's UI changes have me excited, which is not always the case after a Google I/O event. At least in the last however many years, there hasn't been, like, I've been wanting a Android reveal that kind of woke me up, and this woke me up. And so I'm excited to see what it's going to be like. Kind of final thoughts. What do you guys think?
Michael, I'll defer to you.
Sure. So, I'm excited about the Material You stuff. I think it's going to actually add like a lot of delight and kind of nuance, new kind of delight. I guess I already said that, to our phones. So I think it really adds a lot of like enjoyment to us developers and designers that can kind of do some things different. And it's exciting to kind of see where that takes this to the next level.
Yeah, if it does. What about you, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of feeling more like you, Jason, as the further I get away from it, especially after talking through it tonight. Definitely excited for the direction it's going. I'm still not totally sold on Material You, but I want to play with it first. I mean, this is just purely from screenshots and seeing the demos and seeing the videos today. Once I get the beta installed, I get to play with it a little more. I'll kind of report back on my feelings about it. But I was a huge, like Michael, I was a huge proponent and fan of material design from the moment it was announced, and an advocate for it. And that you've, to a certain degree, it's tough because this position I'm making has burned me in the past in other areas, but to a certain degree, you got to trust the people who brought you there, right? And they delivered on material design. It's been such a great kind of evolution since it's come out. So there's got to be a certain level of trust in that Google kind of knows what direction they're going in. But at the same time, that's exactly what I said in 1999 when the Star Wars prequels came out. So
be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for. It's like, man, he made these great other movies. These movies will be great too.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that burned a lot of us, Ron.
Yeah, that's, by the way, if you're counting at home, that was 2 Star Wars references, completely naturally not forced on this show. So there you go.
Nicely done.
Wow, I didn't.
He doesn't have the email of the week sound effect.
That was
but he's got the Chewbacca, so there it is.
Priorities. All right. Well, this has been a fun episode of All About Android. I always love the Google I/O recap. Sad that Flo could not join us today, but super psyched that we got you on, Michael, to help us break this all apart. MikeWolfson.com. Mike, this is your opportunity to promote or tease or anything you got going on. What do you want to leave people with?
So I have nothing to promote, but I would put this out into the world that as we are getting back into the world and COVID is breaking, I think as weird as the last year has been, us coming out of COVID is going to be equally weird. So just have some compassion for your fellow people that are coming out into the world and may not remember how to be social or be with other people as well. So there's some unexpected weirdness, and just be kind to the world.
Yeah, I like
Don't forget that.
True.
Thank you for saying that. I totally agree. It is weird. It's strange, like getting back to normal.
Speaking of, right? Back in the office.
Totally. It was strange coming into the studio this morning, and Leo was sitting here and I was sitting next to him, and I just sit down and like, hey, what's going on? Like, it was like, wait a minute. For like a year, this has been not allowed, and now suddenly it is.
Yep.
But Yes. Thank you for saying that. That's a great message.
It's as weird as the past year has been in isolation. It's going to be a weird rest of the year in reintegration or transition. Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. So,
no question. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike. Like I said, MikeWolfson.com to check in on what Mike is up to. And we will obviously be reaching out to you to have you back, hopefully sooner than next Google I/O, because that's a year away. But always appreciate that you're on deck for the Google I/O.
But next year in person, right?
Oh, God.
Yes.
Crossing my fingers for that, man. Absolutely. That was one thing at the very beginning of Google I/O. They showed that collage of clips and stuff from throughout the history of Google I/O, and I was like, oh man, suddenly I really miss it. I want to be there right now,
Yeah, me too. I got a lot of energy from watching that with all the people talking about what they get out of it and stuff.
Totally. Great. It is a fantastic experience. So thank you again, Mike. Ron, what about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, Michael, it's hard to follow that, but thank you, Michael. That was fantastic. But as we mentioned, I am developer adjacent, and that's mainly because released a mobile app for Scorbit, which lets you keep track of your pinball scores. It's in the Google Play Store for Android. If you go check it out, you can find it just by searching for Scorbit, Scorbit. And yeah, we're working hard on the next version of the app. And yeah, that's about it. So, and follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at RonXO. So
excellent. Thank you, Ron. Some folks just can't get enough Google I/O. Captain J in the IRC is like, I guess there's just not that much to talk about. I was hoping you guys would talk longer. I'm like, we're at an hour and a half, and I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. So some people just, you want more, and I'm sorry we can't give you any more, but this is what we got. And if you do want more, by the way, tomorrow, This Week in Google, I guarantee you they're going to be talking all about Google I/O. So tune into that. I won't be on that episode. I'll be producing it, though, so I'll be behind the scenes. Big thanks to Burke here in the studio for making my landing a soft landing, coming back into the studio and always helping out.
You are welcome.
Behind the scenes on the show. Also, big thanks to Victor, who is behind the scenes, editing the show, turning it around, doing a lot of hard work to put it into your ears. So thank you, Victor. As for me, just find me on the Twit Network, of course. Tech News Weekly this Thursday with Micah Sargent. And then I'm actually on This Week in Tech this Sunday. So I'm going to be here in studio. We've got Mike Elgin, we've got Ian Thompson, and Leo. So all four of us in the studio, obviously coming on to talk all about Google I/O then as well, and everything else. So I don't get on the big show a whole lot. So tune in there as well. By the way, if you did not know, Club Twit, it's going strong. It's our ad-free subscription tier. All our shows, no ads. You also get access to Twit Plus, which is a podcast feed that's exclusive to Club Twit members. Tons of extra content that ends up in there. Some of our pre and post show stuff on All About Android is some of the best stuff that we do. That ends up in the Twit Plus podcast feed.
It's the fun stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of where we let our guard down a little bit, and it's a good time. So, and then also you get access to a members only Discord, $7 a month, twit.tv/clubtwit if you want to check that out. We hope that you do. Chances are you're going to find us in the Discord and you can chat with us. Like, I'm there all the time. So do it. Kind of following on what Mike said, if it's still encouraged in your area, please continue to wear a mask. I know that these things are changing and everywhere kind of has a different rule. So be aware, because not everywhere is experiencing the kind of downward shift in numbers right now as we are here in the US. So still be mindful of that, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's it for this week. We publish this show every Tuesday. All you have to do is go to twit.tv/AAA and you can subscribe to our show in audio and video formats. Jump out to YouTube, subscribe there, do it. And when you do, that means you're going to see us next week on another episode of All About Android. That's it. With Flo sitting at the table. Maybe someday soon Flo will be sitting at the table with me. I bet you'll happen sometime soon.
That'd be pretty cool.
All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on All About Android. Bye, everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I want to tell you about my show, Hands on Photography, here on Twit TV. Each and every week, Thursday, that is. I like to sit down and share with you the best tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer. And it's not always about Photoshop. It's not always about just having the biggest and baddest and bestest camera. It can be the simplest of things, like leave your eye open when you're looking through the viewfinder. All of these simple tips can really help step your photography game up. So subscribe to the show today. That's twit.tv/hop. And I look forward to talking to you soon.